I'd like to call to order this November meeting of the Suffolk City School Board and ask Mr. Enoch Copeland to offer the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand, everybody.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. Okay. We have the certification of the closed meeting, please.
Resolution of certification of the closed meeting of November 13th, 2014, pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended.
Move for the approval. Adoption, really.
Second. Board members will please vote.
Do we have any public
Motion
speakers?
carried.
I'm sorry, do we have any public speakers?
No.
Reports by the superintendent, Dr. Whitney.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. As you know, this is the time that we do our Good News Report. I'm going to call to the podium Ms. Beth Ann Bradshaw.
Good evening. Each month we take the opportunity to share with you, our board members, and with our viewing public and our audience at home, some of the exciting things that happen in our schools each and every day, and some of the outstanding achievements of both our students and our staff. Tonight we're recognizing two people who've made a significant difference in the division's efforts to support the families of students with disabilities. I'd like to call on Dr. Antoine Hickman, Director of Special Education, to continue this special presentation.
Dr. Whitney, Chairman Dobransky, board members, good evening. Several months ago, when we gave the Special Education Advisory Committee gave their annual report, you requested that we bring Deborah Bagley and Lewis Bagley and recognize them and their efforts for having supported Suffolk Public Schools for more than 19 years. Actually, Deborah Bagley's actual hire date was November 10th of '94, and she retired just a little earlier than 20 years. Although this is a good news report to be presented this evening, and it's a good news for Ms. Bagley and Mr. Bagley as well, retirement was not such good news for Suffolk Public Schools, because in that we lost a good person who's a good SEAC representative, a parent, and a spokesperson for students with disabilities. With Ms. Bagley, we also, as I mentioned, we had a 2-for-1 deal. We had Ms. Bagley and Mr. Bagley who worked together on just giving their personal time, their efforts, commitments, energy, and sometimes their funds to providing a voice for the often unheard and misrepresented. Ms. Bagley's responsibilities included helping parents navigate the special education system by helping them understand their responsibilities and their rights and their children's rights, and helping them just navigate their process. Also, she was responsible for maintaining the Parent Resource Center and recruitment and retention of SEAC members. She provided information and supportive services to parents, teachers, and the community. She offered educational opportunities, often monthly, provided newsletters, just meetings, trainings, anything that we needed to work with parents, the community, and just to be a voice for the voiceless. Most of all, she lended an understanding ear and had individual consultations with parents and community members. Again, we did have a 2-for-1 deal with her and Mr. Bagley. Mr. Bagley also spearheaded a number of subcommittees and committees over the years, one of which is a Disability Awareness Committee. We like to say, although it may not be true, that the governor heard our plea, because we started a Disability Awareness Committee long before it was mandated by the governor 4 years ago, maybe, that we recognize October as Disability History and Awareness Month. But the Bagleys had a long history of doing things that made folks aware of students with disabilities, their rights and responsibilities. Without going too much further, Vivian Evitt, SEAC Chair, will share some things with you. She had more of a personal relationship with the Bagleys over the years.
Good evening.
Evening.
As you know, my name is Vivian Evett. I'm the chairperson for the Suffolk Special Education Advisory Committee, also known as SEAC. Tonight I have the honor of presenting two very special people to the board. Louis and Deborah Bagley were first introduced to the disability community after the birth of their son David in 1977. When he began school at the age of 2, they were introduced to the special education services. In 1994, when David was 16, the Parent Resource Center was created. Thankfully, Deborah was selected for the position. Since then, she has provided special education assistance to parents, educators, students, grandparents, relatives, and community members. SEAC was created soon afterward to help the school system improve their special education services. In the beginning, the committee consisted of only the special education coordinator, the school psychologist, and the PRC representative. The only committee member who was a parent of a student with special needs at that time was Deborah. Of course, in the usual way of the Bagleys, Louis joined soon afterward. One of the goals they set for themselves was to improve parental involvement in special education. In addition to their full-time positions and full-time family, the Bagleys were also active in Parent-to-Parent Special Olympics, ARC, and Partners in Policymaking. They also worked with lawmakers to improve opportunities available to students with disabilities graduating from high school. For her 1997 graduation project from Partners in Policymaking, Deborah worked to bring Challenger Little League of Suffolk to Suffolk. This thing is distracting me. It won't stop moving. Challengers is a Little League program for kids with special needs. This was a particularly personal endeavor as Louis coached Little League at Bennett's Creek for their other two sons, and they wished to provide David and other kids with special needs with the therapeutic and socialization benefits of sports. Of course, Louis stepped up to coach the team. Deborah served as Mrs. Coach and continued her support of the team. Over the years, the Bagleys used their interactions through Challengers to encourage parents to become more involved in improving special education in our schools, as well as improving services and opportunities for people with disabilities in our community. Through SEAC, Louis and Ann Fisher, also a key figure in special education development in Suffolk Public Schools, drew up a plan to bring disability awareness activities into our schools. Over these many years, the Bagleys have continued to help raise a better awareness and understanding for children with special needs among their peers. Even after the devastating loss of their son David in his senior year, the Bagleys continued to dedicate themselves to helping people with disabilities. Through their combined efforts with the Parent Resource Center, Special Olympics, Challenger Little League, and SEAC, they have educated parents in the often inscrutable maze that is special education. They have empowered families with the knowledge and confidence needed to advocate for their children. They have opened new opportunities for people with disabilities in our community, and they have worked tirelessly to improve special education services in our school system. Over the last 20 years, the faces in special education in Suffolk Public Schools have changed many times over. The one constant measure of support and empowerment for families of children with special needs during that time has been the Bagleys. Please welcome Louis and Deborah Bagley.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
Wow. Very, very nice, kind words were just said, and I appreciate them all. But truly, it was more of a blessing to me to do this, and I thank Suffolk Public Schools for allowing me to do this for almost 20 years. I loved it. It was a dream job come true. I met many, many parents, many, many educators, children. I thank God for my experiences, and thank you so much. I'm short on words, but I'll go outside here, and I'm going to have me a good cry after this. Thank you all so much for the memories. Thank you.
Thank you so very sincerely from the very bottom of our heart. One of the things that I would like to share with you very quickly, though, and they've heard this story before, but I want to tell it to you. If you've heard it before, forgive me. but went to the Worldwide Jamboree for Children with Special Needs, which is a baseball tournament that's held over in Norfolk, Virginia Beach each year. While we were watching, getting ready to go on the field to play our game, there was a father in left field whose son could not walk. And so what he did is the son sat down, the father kneeled behind him. A line drive was hit from home plate into left field. Pretty hard line drive. The father picked the child up, pulled him to his chest, ran and slid on his back underneath the ball. The son pulled his arm up with his glove and caught the ball. The most unbelievable catch I've ever seen in my life. I've not seen that at any level of baseball. But it just goes to show you that with teamwork, when we work together, we can accomplish the impossible. So keep doing a good job. We're going to still support you. We're just going to fall out of the upfront portion of it, but we're still going to support you. Thank you. You're doing a great job as well. Thank you.
I just can't believe you're thanking us. It's very seldom that we are gifted with such a gem as both of you. I'd like to read a letter from the Suffolk Public Schools. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bagley, it is with great pleasure that we take this time to publicize. I apologize. I'm kind of upset too. Okay, let me start over again. It is with great pleasure that we take this time to publicly recognize and commend your efforts in promoting public awareness of students with disabilities. As the parents of a child with disabilities, your commitment to improving awareness for all children is clearly recognized and appreciated. Your involvement with both the Parent Resource Center and Special Education Advisory Committee, SEAC, from their inception was invaluable in improving the special education services of Suffolk Public Schools. Through your efforts to bring disability awareness activities into our schools, you not only encouraged parents to become better advocates for their children, you provided the information and support that allowed parents to become more involved with their child's educational needs. The impact you have made on our young people, their families, and the Suffolk community is unlimited. On behalf of the Suffolk City School Board, school staff, parents, and students, we thank you for the time, passion, and dedication you both have provided over the years, and for your continued support of Suffolk Public Schools. We wish you the very best in your future endeavors. And that is, thank you so much.
Deborah and Lewis, I've really been honored to be associated with you for even a longer period of time than you worked for Suffolk. I know that what you've done is to bring the students that have disabilities to the forefront. You've allowed more people to realize how special they are and how they need to be included in everything. So you all have been a star and an outstanding example of what we should be doing. Thank you.
If I could just add, Mr. Chairman, I too want to thank the Bagleys. I feel like they've been here ever since I've been here, longer actually, so I appreciate the work. You're a perfect example of what it means to be committed and to work together to get things done, so we certainly appreciate it. On behalf of my predecessors, Dr. Liverman and Mrs. Trump, I'm sure they want to thank you as well. Next, under the superintendent's report, we have the Virginia School Board Association Academy Awards. And board members, as you take a look in the folder before you, you have either an award for excellence, honor, or distinction. Just so the general public will realize, these are awards that are given to board members based on the service that they do, whether it's professional development, they receive a certification or certificate, silver pen, gold pen, or starfish pen, which is the highest as far as the distinction. So congratulations to each of you for receiving those awards. We also, as we do each year, have our WHRO Annual Impact Statement presentation tonight. I'm going to call to the podium Mr. Bert Schmidt and Mr. Brian Callahan to share with you just the annual update as to where we are with WHRO. Mr. Schmidt.
Chairman, Dr. Whitney, members of the board, thank you for allowing us to speak with you again this year. My name is Bert Schmidt. I'm the president and CEO of WHRO, and with me is Brian Callahan, my vice president for education, so if you ask anything really hard, he can back me up. We provide you an annual impact statement. I believe you have this report. I think it's page 5 in your booklet. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, of course, but I want to highlight some things that happened over the past school year so you're aware of the relationship we have and the value we bring to you. First off, and I think it's your page 6, our page 1 of 17, I want to recognize those who are actively involved with the station. Linda Bouchard, as your representative, does a wonderful job representing you from the school board. Dr. Whitney, of course, is on our Superintendent's Advisory Council, and I'd let you know, not only is he on that council, he is vice chair of that council, so we'll be chairman next year, and we're going to put him to work pretty hard next year.
That's the first time I've heard that, but okay. I'm joking.
Okay. And he's also on the WHRO governing board because of the respect he has amongst his peers. So he is one of my bosses, and I really appreciate working with him as well. I want to acknowledge John Littlefield for all the work he's done with us over the years. He's a real leader in technology throughout the entire region, as well as Christine Lafferty. She actually chaired our content committee last year. So folks from Suffolk have really been good representatives with WHRO. Getting into the report itself on the next page, our educator resource training. We provide you with 2 digital on-demand services. One is called Discovery Education Streaming. This is DE streaming that you may be familiar with. We do a group purchasing for you that saves you a lot of money. Last year, your students used it over 40,000 times. But schools came to us a few years back and they said they wanted their own education portal that would be free. And so WHRO has built you eMedia VA. Is a new free portal that your teachers can use. It has great national content from organizations like the Smithsonian and National Archives, Library of Congress. It also has wonderful local content as well from organizations throughout the state. About 20,000 learning objects are based here in Virginia, and we're adding more and more new resources that your teachers never had access to. So eMedia VA is available for you as well. And we also have single sign-on solutions as well as a local hosting option to save you those bandwidth costs. We also provide you it's called our Teacher Line service. That's that number 2 on that page. 18 of your teachers took graduate credit or recertification courses through WHRO this past year, and they can get graduate credit through JMU. I'm going to jump a couple pages to it would be your page. I think it's your page 9, my page 4. Student services. A few years back, the schools asked WHRO to create courses for you. As you know, there's a new requirement that your class of 17 and beyond will have to take an online course to graduate high school. Well, we are now one of those solutions. We've provided to you, we've built for you 22 online high school core curriculum courses. We made the courses and we gave them back to you free of charge. You can see we have the list of those courses here in that second paragraph. Algebra, trig, astronomy, biology, chemistry, earth science, English 9, 10, 11, and 12, financial literacy, geometry, health PE 9 and 10, oceanography, physics, U.S. history, U.S. and Virginia government, world geography, world history 1 and 2, and we just added recently some more world geography, world history, and astronomy. So now you have those 22 courses to be used however you want. You own those courses. So as you are developing your strategies for digital education, you own those as part of your membership with WHRO. Also, WHRO runs Virtual Virginia for the state, and 15 of your students took either advanced placement and world language courses through this service. And we do the group purchasing for NovaNet, where you have 25 licenses within the division. Going on to the next page, and you take great advantage of a number of these services. These are a lot of our opportunities for you to celebrate smart kids. And I love celebrating smart kids. You know, sometimes the athletes get all the accolades, but we like to celebrate those smart kids as well. I want to highlight just a couple of the opportunities you have for the PBS Go Kids Writers Contest. This is for the elementary school level, so if you have teachers that want to get their kids to write stories, tell stories, this is an opportunity for them to illustrate and write stories and then submit those. We have a contest. We have hundreds of kids that put their stories in, and the winners get animated, and we put them on our television station. We have an animated show with the best of those winners. The spelling bee, of course, we do every year. You've been involved in that. In fact, you had your champion from John F. Kennedy Middle School competed last year. And we have the Great Computer Challenge. This is an opportunity for your kids who really enjoy working with computers and the various software technologies to create teams. And we have both the junior level as well as the senior level. So it's really a K-12 activity. So those teachers who are involved in computer technologies want to create teams. And all that really takes is some messaging from leadership that this is something that is of value to the division, and they could be actively involved in those activities. We are also producing Education Now spots, and we're highlighting the activities, the great work being done in divisions throughout Virginia. So that's something our superintendents asked for a while back. Going to your page, I think it's your page 12, my page 7 of 17. Early learning opportunities for your schools. I won't go through them all, but just know that we have a number of reading camps, reading buddies, literacy van that comes out here often, library corners, Anytime is Learning Time training where we work with young parents, mobile media labs. In fact, I have staff coming out here tomorrow for the Children's Center Fall Festival with our readers van. So, and as board members, though, probably the most important page is that page, my page 9 of 17, I think it's your page 14. That's your return on investment. And as you'll see there, for the $2 per student that you invest in WHRO, last school year you saved over $779,000. We hope you think that's a pretty good ROI on your investment. And I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
As complete as this report is, I noticed that there is no spoiler preview of Downton Abbey.
No, there is not.
Boy, we love that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you.
Other board members?
No, I served on this committee several years ago,
Right.
and we always looked at this as an investment, and one that was very worthwhile because it benefited not only our students but also our teachers and our staff. And without it, we would do without a lot of stuff that we're now enjoying. So thank you, Bert.
Thank you very much.
If I could just add, one of the things that is really good about WHRO is that they're very responsive to our needs. Right now, they're developing a social media awareness for our students. One of the superintendents had recommended that, and they're going to develop a mini curriculum type thing that all of the school divisions could use so that we can show our children on how to appropriately use social media.
We're actually going to develop 21 of those workplace readiness soft skill. We're going to create modules, kind of like an online chapter for each of those 21 skills, starting with what the schools requested, but we're working with a number of workforce investment boards as well, and all of those will be available to the schools for free once they're developed. We're developing 5 right now, and as we get funding, we'll do the rest, but it won't cost you anything.
Notice the classes that you offered were all high school classes primarily, is that correct?
They are high school, yes.
And we have a port in every high school?
I'm sorry?
We have a port in
Yes, every high school has access to those, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The fourth item on the superintendent's report is the school improvement plan updates. You may recall a while back you asked that we bring before you each school that's accredited with a warning in a particular content area to you to present to you what their improvement efforts include. This month we have 3 schools, Booker T. Washington, Mac Ben Elementary Junior, and Elephants Fork Elementary School. But before they begin, I'm going to call to the podium Ms. Jacqueline Chavis, our Deputy Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, to talk about district-wide efforts just a few of the district-wide efforts. You've heard a lot about response to intervention, and one of the things that we've decided to do this year is to look at our schools and determine what type of intervention or assistance perhaps each school needs based on their status. And she's going to share with you just how that works. Ms. Chavis.
Good evening. What we will share with you today, you've heard in previous presentations a mention of something called a pyramid of intervention, and what we have developed here, as the superintendent just mentioned, is a pyramid of support that we will be providing, the way we will be providing supports to our schools. And again, it is based on the current status as it relates to accreditation with state standings. And so we'll work with the bottom tier being Tier 1 up to Tier 4 where the most intensive support will occur. The Tier 1 supports, as you can see, will be for those schools that are fully accredited. That means they met the benchmark or exceeded the benchmark outright. And the schools there listed are Northern Shores and Nansemond River. The important thing about these two schools is that they consistently meet those benchmarks. And so we want to commend them on those efforts. Tier 3, that yellow tier, Tier 2, the next tier, are schools that are fully accredited. However, it took a 3-year average to get accreditation, meaning that it took 3 years in a particular area. If they didn't meet it outright, then an average to get them to that full accreditation status, and you can see the schools listed there. Tier 3 would be those schools that are warned, and in this case, those schools on Tier 3 are all warned in the area of English. And so when we look at the supports that are be given to those schools, that we will have a heavy emphasis there in the area of English. These would be schools that are either in the first or second year of improvement. And then the 4th tier, the red tier, would be the 3 schools that are currently working under state monitoring with us. That means that the state will provide training. The principals have been meeting and working with state representatives on looking at, we've talked before about the alignment of the lesson plans with the observations of that teacher's lesson, as well as with the assessments, the whole alignment piece. The superintendent mentioned earlier in the work session about feedback, working with principals to provide quality and effective feedback to the teachers. The monitoring occurs in 2 ways. One, a Virginia Department of Education consultant will come in and work with Elephants Fork because they're in a different status as it relates to having not met subgroup benchmarks. And Mr. Skinner will share more information about that. Kings Fork and Lakeland are in their 3rd year of having not met benchmarks in the area of math. And so while all of our schools submit a school improvement plan electronically and it's monitored by us, the plans for those 3 schools are also monitored electronically at the state level in what we call IndiStar. Here are the supports that are offered at each of those levels, and each tier builds on the next. So those supports that we offer, services we offer at Tier 1, will be offered Tier 2, 3, and 4 as well. And so we want to start with building the capacity in the buildings because these schools, the 2 schools mentioned before, are schools that have consistently met accreditation status. And so our services to them may be both direct and indirect by way of meetings at the city level, our steering committee representatives you see there. If there is an academic coach in that building, working very closely with them, and then any requests that the principal may have of us. We also monitor them through our academic reviews and their school improvement plans. Tier 2, again, at this particular level, the principals, during their school improvement plan meetings with us, we pose a question to them, what are your instructional non-negotiables? And there are things that they have established in their building, their expectations of their teachers and staff, and so they've shared those with us. Again, monitoring of plans, because the schools on this tier, many of them are warned in the area of English, they're monitoring very closely their reading plans and their reading intervention programs. Tier 3 schools, again, those that are warned either for the 1st or 2nd year. We've talked much about aligning and modeling appropriate strategies, additional supports in their buildings. It could be, special ed has been working very, very closely with staff as well, with training and support services to students, sharing best practices across the board, and then any additional resources and planning for an extended period of time. So in lieu of just spending a couple of days in a building, we will have a presence in those buildings over an extended period of time to make sure that we are modeling and supporting them as needed. And then our Tier 4 schools, again, those 3 schools that are also being monitored by the state. This is what the services to those schools will look like. You hear the principal, Mr. Skinner, all 3 principals actually, Mr. Skinner here tonight, Dr. Lefebvre, Dr. Wrights, and Mr. Lefebvre will share some things that they all have also been doing. Mr. Wagner and Dr. Bird shared things with you during our meeting last month as far as their support. So more training and analyzing data, particularly with the special education teachers, involving them more in professional development with the general education teachers. Again, more modeling of appropriate strategies in the classroom by our supervisors and specialists, and then more weekly planning with the teams. Mrs. Bouchard asked earlier about planning sessions and those collaborative planning sessions. We actually have our specialists and supervisors who sit with them to look at that alignment across the board to make sure that the rigor is where it's expected to be by way of lesson plans and the assessments that are delivered. And so you'll hear some of these things mentioned this evening by the principals that will be presenting to you. This gives you an overview of how we're servicing. Because of the needs are different, we want to make sure that we were focusing our efforts in those particular areas. Question?
So are there any federal monies out there available for help?
We use those schools that are Title I schools. We maximize those funds.
Yeah.
Outside of that, no, sir.
Are we not getting some teacher aides or?
The federal money that we receive is the federal money we're eligible for, as she said, Title I and Title II money. Oftentimes, those monies can be used based on the needs, based on the student's performance at a particular school, or based on the socioeconomic status of the school.
I mean, are we going to be able to get Elephants Fork any extra help other than this?
Locally, we are addressing some of the needs based on what the principal develops in his or her plan. And I think you'll see that one of the reasons we started with this is because these are things that we're doing across the board for select schools. When the principals present their plan tonight, you're going to see how they have individualized based on the data, based on what they think their school needs. Does it involve additional funding? In some cases, it very well might. It's a challenge, of course, when you have as many elementary schools as we do, and you have one elementary school wondering, why didn't I get additional funding or that additional staff member? But we're basing it on the needs. Based on the needs, there might be additional funds locally that we provide each individual school, again, based on the data and how we feel like it will meet their needs.
You had a category that, and you were talking about subgroups.
Yes.
Of those subgroups, do we have some numbers on the not names or counts, just some numbers regarding the subgroups that might have impacted the scores?
To see that in Mr. Skinner's presentation, because that you are aware that his school is called a focus school, and that is because his subgroups, what the state calls gap groups, did not meet particular benchmark in key areas, and so he'll share that data with you. That's why he's in that status, because he's a Title I school and did not meet those subgroup objectives. So that is forthcoming.
At this time, you can let our first principal come up, Ms. Travis.
Our first principal is Dr. Wrights from Booker T. Washington Elementary School, and you can see that he has a strong contingency with him here this evening in support of his presentation. Dr. Wrights?
His presentation begins on page 23 in your notebook.
Good evening, Dr. Whitney, Dr. Dobransky, school board members. I'm Dr. Wrights, the principal of Booker T. Washington Elementary School, and I'm very proud to be here this evening to talk to you about the many good things that are happening at Booker T. Currently, right now, our current status for the 2014-15 school year, we are accredited in warning in English, math, and science, and as you can see, we have a 2-year average for the 2012-13 and the 2013-14. In math, we had 61% a year ago. Last year, we had 57%, which was a difference of 4%. Reading, we had an increase of 2%. In writing, we had an increase of 17%. In history, we had a decrease of 7%, and science, we had an increase of 4%. When you look at the 2013-14 English, math, and science SOL results for the breakdown of our grade levels, we have grade 3 at 46%, grade 4 at 50%, and grade 5 at 60%. When you look at the math, we have grade 3 at 31%, Grade 4, 66%, grade 5 at 66%. And then our science, which is grade 3, 65%, grade 4 does not take it, and grade 5 at 67%. Today I had the pleasure of attending the CERN Principals Academy at William & Mary, and one of the things, quotes that came out of that academy was by Albert Einstein, and he stated that insanity is doing the same thing over and over. At Booker T. Washington, we realized that we needed change, and we have embraced the change this year. Many of the goals and strategies that we have put into place this year, I think you will enjoy hearing, and you will also see how our teachers are growing and how our students are going to grow from these many strategies of the change that we've put in place. For instance, we're increasing student engagement. How we are increasing student engagement, we are a whole brain teaching school. Every teacher in our building is required to use our 4 techniques and our 5 rules. Those 5 rules follow the students throughout the whole entire building, whether it's in the cafeteria, on the bus, in a resource classroom, art, music, or PE, they hear those rules over and over. Whole brain is just not a technique and is just not just the rules. It also embraces, and the students are able to use all the modalities of their brain. The hearing, the seeing, the modality of emotions, and motion itself. Putting all those ingredients together, you're going to get a recipe of great student engagement, and the students are working hard. We always remember the quote, the hardest working person learns the most. We want that to be our students. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I do attend the William & Mary CERN Institute for Principals, and this is my 2nd year, and whatever I learned there, I do bring back to the building. If you look at conducting a learning continuum in training, our teachers analyze the data, which is our MAP scores, which is our SOL scores, and our PAL scores. Every student in the building is also looking at they use a student data notebook where they create their own goals for each one of our benchmarks, for each one of for the SOLs, and for when it comes to multiplication tests or spelling tests, they create their own goals. We have alignment of the standards and full implementation of a building-wide lesson plan template. Why would we need a building-wide lesson plan template? I think it's extremely important that our teachers, we sit down together as a group and we talk about alignment, we talk about unpacking, and when I talk to a 1st grade teacher, that same language is used with a 5th grade teacher. So the same template is used throughout the building, and it's very important that we use that continuity throughout the building. We do professional development on formative assessments and curriculum alignment and unpacking of our standards. Many of those professional developments have been provided by our science supervisor, and she has come in and given many of those workshops and professional developments. We're looking into having Communities and Schools initiative coming to Booker T. Washington in the near future also. Increasing our reading instruction. Foundations is used in grades K, 1, and 2. And what is Foundations? It's the phonetic use of the students sounding out the words so that they become better readers, and it helps the teachers tier those students so that they can become better readers. We have the continuum of balanced literacy training and implementation. We have alignment of the reading instruction and assessment, and our Title I reading teachers assist in monitoring reading instruction and providing extra guided reading to grades K through 2. Also, they look at the lesson plans along with the administration whenever we are looking at making sure that those plans are aligned. We also have Book Buddies in our building, which is a community support, and that is a UVA program where once a week for our 1st grade students, they get one-on-one attention and books are read with them, and they are given strategies to help them become better readers. We have Reading to Learn Transmedia Project funded through WHRO. We have One School, One Book program where every month we have the same book and it is read through the entire building, and every teacher is given that book and it's read with their students. We talk about it on the morning announcements throughout the month. We also have a common theme with that book that we talk about. Last month was disabilities, and then we're looking at bullying coming up. We have guided reading happening every day in our classrooms. Our resource team, which is our art, music, and PE, incorporate reading and math into the lesson planning every day, and we've increased our accelerated reader program in all grade levels, including our kindergarten. We have some kindergartners right now taking accelerated reader test. Due to whole brain strategies and many of the other things that we have in place, our referrals this year for discipline have dropped about 75% from last year. Increasing enrichment opportunities at Booker T. Washington. We have a 4th and 5th grade STEM program going on. We have the Air and Space Outreach Program for grades K through 5. We increase collaboration teaching in our inclusion classrooms. We have continued professional development at the Google Summit, Edivation, and eMedia Virginia. And we do walkthrough on student engagement. We did a walkthrough in student engagement with our deputy superintendent just recently, and she provided very valuable input on how we can increase that engagement within our building. Increasing our math and science instructional quality is, as I stated, we have our STEM program in place. We have professional development supporting the guided math, and that was by our SAO representative. She came in and has done professional development for us in our building. We have professional development going on by analyzing our SOL SPBQ data, and that was by our math instructional specialist supervisor. We have the daily bell ringer. We also have Chromebooks, 30 Chromebooks in our building, and that helps supports our TEI questions, and also students are able to use their apps and receive emails on that too. Increasing student engagement through the use of our whole brain strategies again, and unpacking the standards to make sure the skills are being taught and tested at the appropriate cognitive level. Again, I do want to state, didn't coerce them, but I do want to state thank you very much for my staff coming out and supporting. Please stand if you're from Booker T. Washington, either staff or parent. That's the type of support we do have at Booker T. Washington, and this type of community that we have built because of the fact that we do believe in our children, and we do know that we will get them to grow even more. And that is it.
Questions for Dr. Rice? Any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'd like to know, how do you choose one book that will appeal to K through 5?
Good question. What we did is we sent a few of our teachers to the reading conference last year, and they were given a list of books. And on that list of books, it would target certain topics. We came back, and as a committee, we looked at what topics we wanted to target at Booker T. Washington. Some of those topics were October being Disability Month, awareness. We chose a book with the main character had autism. So we talked about that child on morning announcements. The teachers read that book just to get the awareness out there of that disability. It is something that's not extremely obvious, but we did talk about it. We looked at bullying, so it may be a book that is somewhat primary in certain areas on a monthly basis. A 5th grader still loves to be read to.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what type of level it is on, they love to be read to. If some of the books are more complex, that's why the teachers read it too, the kindergarten and 1st grade students, and then they talk about the comprehension aspects of that.
Sounds like a great program.
It is fun.
Dr. Rice, how do you identify the students in special needs, not special needs students, but in special needs of help in English, math, and reading in grades 3, 4, and 5, and do you provide those only with extra services, or do you sort of lump them in with those students that don't need the help?
Well, this past year, Ms. Williams, the assistant principal, and I have really tried to incorporate our students more into the general education curriculum. We are trying to get them more exposed to the social aspect of how to act in a classroom, and also be exposed to the SOLs more than an isolated inclusive classroom. So we've identified those students from their IEP goals through the things that we need to make sure accommodation-wise, and maybe their previous testing through SOLs. We give them the extra support in the classroom, also too with an inclusion teacher that would go into the classroom and give the teacher extra support in the student support.
So you're saying most of these students that are identified have the help of an inclusion teacher as well, is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Rice, with your decrease in discipline, I feel very strongly that you're going to accomplish, well, the school will accomplish the goals this year, because of what I heard you said that your discipline had decreased considerably, and that's a plus.
I agree with
to
you.
commend you for that.
Thank you.
Dr. Rice, how many students in your subgroups, not by category, but how many students in your subgroups did not make the benchmark? How many children are we talking about?
We're talking our AMOs.
Mm-hmm.
We did not meet our AMOs, and there's a percentage of the economically disadvantaged category, subcategory, and of the other categories, we did not meet also the special needs. But within our data presentations, we just did a data presentation yesterday, our staff is aware of the fact of what our AMOs are and what we need to reach in order to make sure those subcategories are met, and what we need to do as a school to meet those categories and those needs. So the staff is aware of what categories, subcategories we currently right now need more help with.
I tend to think with what you have, and I guess this is the time to make this comment. I've been to your school. I got to read at your school last school year. It's a wonderful place to be, and I really like the fact that your faculty and your parents are here together, and they're committed to working together with you. So I look forward to your successes.
Anytime you want.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rice.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Our next principal presentation will be Mr. Andre Skinner, the principal of Elephants Fork Elementary School. Mr. Skinner.
Greetings, Dr. Dobransky, Dr. Whitney, and members of the school board and also members of the community. My name is Andre Skinner, the proud principal of Elephants Fork Elementary School. Tonight I will be reporting on accreditation status, school scores, as well as identifying strategies for school and content-specific improvements that are in place for this school year. For the 2014-15 school year, Elephants Fork is accredited with warning in English and mathematics. If we jump right into our area focus of reading, you'll see 2013-14. 2 grade levels did have decreases in reading. Grades 3 and grade 5 with 13% decrease in 12, but we had grade 4 with a 6% increase. Grades 3 through 5 combined for 48%, which was a 6% decrease from the previous year. In our focus area of mathematics, we had grade 3 had a very large decrease, but grades 4 and 5 positively increased, but still giving us a grades 3 through 5 combined score of 57%, which is a 6% decrease from the previous year in mathematics. In our area focus of reading, we're reporting by scale scores. A scale score of 30 is considered to be proficient. This slide will show several areas that our reading program will place an emphasis on during the school year as we work to improve these categories. In grades 3, 4, and 5, the same categories reported out as having below 30% proficiency. Those are word analysis strategies, the comprehension of nonfiction text, and the comprehension of fictional text. In our area focus of reading, once again with scale scores, of mathematics, once again with scale scores considered 30 to be proficient. Grades 4 had the 25.5 and 25.6, a little bit higher. Grades 3 and 5 were all under 25%. Those areas of focus for this particular school year: number and number sense, measurement and geometry, computation and estimation, and probability, statistics, and patterns. Elephants Fork was identified as a focus schools. Focus schools are Title I schools that have been identified based on reading and mathematics performances of students in 3 proficiency gap groups. Those gap groups are also given federal annual measurable objectives that we call AMOs. They are given target scores, and if you do not perform and reach those target scores, you end up with a reading gap or mathematics gap. The proficiency gap group 1 consists of students with disabilities, students that come from homes that are economically disadvantaged, or students that are English as second language learners. For gap group 1, we had a reading gap point of 23% in reading. For math, for gap group 1, we had an 8% gap. Gap group 2 is your African American population. The target was 57. We had a reading gap group, a gap point of 22% for African American students in reading. Math was 7% gap. Gap group 3, which are our Hispanic students, had reading targets of 60, in which they actually met their reading and they also met their math gaps. Our subgroup of Caucasian students also had state-given reading targets, which were 75%. They met their reading gap as well as their math gap at a 75% as well. For the school year, school improvement strategies, we're going to continue with the alignment process of the written, taught, and tested. We'll continue to improve this process by aligning our curriculum framework with what is written in our lesson plans, how it's taught to our students, and how we test for proficiency of these skills that are introduced. During this alignment process, the administrative team provides feedback to our teachers through enhancing and checking lesson plans and then giving words to enhance their lesson plans for our teachers. That's the written part. Administration then would observe the teacher implementing these written lesson plans and provide them feedback on the delivery of the written plans. That's the taught. And then the final phase of the alignment process is the creation of assessments in which we correlate with the lesson that was written and taught. As far as professional development, we've made placed a strong emphasis on differentiating our professional development for our teachers and also for myself. Guided math development foundations, guided reading, unpacking SOL standards, student engagement strategies, and formative assessments will all become and have become part of our entrenched professional development for particular grade levels and for particular teachers in general. Communities and Schools is going to be another program that we hope to partner with sometime in 2015, and that's a site-based program that will assist my building by creating a needs assessment that's specifically designed for Elephants Fork students and their families. I believe that we will benefit by being connected with services for our families that could include, and for our students, mentorship possibilities, health services, whole family counseling, transportation, or any type of needs that we can kind of connect our students and our families within our zone. Additional staffing, we're in the process of hiring a math coach position which will assist with math program development, assist with curriculum and the professional development in regards to the mathematics program that we have. 2 special education teachers, which will assist in decreasing the caseload size, providing flexibility with inclusion classes. An additional teacher at the 4th grade level to lower the 4th grade student-teacher ratio, and 2 teacher assistants which will provide teacher and student assistance. For myself, student engagement, attending the CERN Principals Academy, just as Dr. Rice, and it gives us a new idea or a new way to evaluate student engagement, assisting with providing evaluative feedback to our teachers. Engagement strategies are also a main focus to improve teacher performance. Content-specific strategies. We have implemented Book Buddies tutoring program, which we've partnered with West End Baptist Church. Book Buddies, of course, Dr. Rice has already stated, is a UVA research-based program. In our building, we're going 2 students to 1 student with that tutoring, and it enables trained and licensed volunteers to kind of work with students at their actual reading reality, which intensely creates better readers when they're going from that 1st grade to that 2nd grade level before the testing grades come into effect. We've implemented a new program called RAS Kids, which is an interactive reading program that has electronic ebooks that gives students an opportunity to read books on their level during school and at home if they have internet access, smartphones, iPads, or any tablets. So something that they can actually use to practice fluency. They can also complete some running records to diagnose their errors, and they can take comprehension quizzes as they are leveling up for successful reading. We're going to expand collaborative teaching. With the addition of the special education teachers, we're able to make certain that they can co-teach with single grade level responsibilities in the testing grades 3 through 5 and have common grade level planning with their general education teacher. Scheduling, we've implemented flexible scheduling that allows students to be placed in teachers' classrooms across that grade level that have shown specific strengths and SOL strands, so that if a teacher has shown that they are teaching fractions exceptionally well, then that grade level of students that have that less or that concern, effort, and proficiency in that particular strand will then be placed through that teacher, and we'll do that for mathematics from grades 3 through 5. We're also looking at the double block scheduling that will allow some of our more intense students that have more intense needs to receive 40 additional minutes of instruction in math or reading during their resource block time as identified as an additional intervention for specific students. Then we're going to finish off with Foundations reading program, in which we're currently in professional development now. And of course, that reading program is implemented with students that have more intensive reading needs. And that was the phonetic program that assists with reading rules, phonics, to build up our readers. And we're doing that K through 5. It is Foundations in K through 2, and it turns into Wilson Reading Series in grades 3 through 5. That will end my presentation for Elephant's Fork, and I'll
Questions by board members?
take questions.
Go ahead.
There's only one thing I'm concerned about. You're talking about students doing extra things at home with their smartphones or computers. How many disadvantaged children are going to have those assets?
Well, what we're doing, that program is actually taking place inside of Elephant's Fork's computer lab. It's also available at home inside of your tablets and the internet if they have access. We're currently working in in one zone right now, attempting to get the computer access inside of their community center. So we'll be working with that actually tomorrow during parent-teacher conferences.
Mr. Skinner, how many of these programs that you have talked to us about are actually in place and working now, up and running?
All programs except the communities and schools.
Okay.
Communities and schools is a venture we're hoping will get passed through the beginning of January, but Raz Kids is currently in process. Book Buddies is currently in process.
How many inclusion teachers do you have?
Inclusion teachers now, we are at 4, and we will be bringing in an additional inclusion teacher.
Excellent. They're going to be plenty for the third grade students.
Yes, as a result of the increase of additional hires, we'll now have 1 inclusion teacher in 3rd, 1 in 4th, and 1 in 5th.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Board members. Thank you,
Just
Mr.
wanted to tell you, Mr. Skinner, that I'm happy about the fact that you're going to be going into the community and working with, I'm supposing, Parks and Recreation or with the community to bring those services so that children who cannot access those services from their home have the community center and they can get those services.
Yes, ma'am. Suffolk Redevelopment and Housing.
Wonderful.
Mrs. Murphy and her crew. Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Skinner. You all did hear him as well as Dr. Wright mention community and schools. Obviously, that's something that we hope to do. During next month's meeting, we're going to give you an overview of that, and hopefully you all will support that decision to have this nonprofit organization come into the schools and provide the assistance based on each school's needs assessment. Thank you, Mr. Skinner. And now we'll have Mr. LaFave from McBen Elementary School.
Good evening, Dr. Dobransky, Dr. Whitney, and school board members. My name is Dave LaFave, and I'm the proud principal at Mac Ben Elementary School, and I'm really looking forward tonight to going over some of the results of our SOL test with you and talking again with you a little bit about the strategies that we're using at Mac Ben from the results of those SOL tests. Let me begin by going over our accreditation status. Last year we were accredited in the warning in the area of math, and this year it is math and reading. If you take a look at our scores, as you see on the screen in the paper that you have in front of you, we noted a decrease in grade 3 reading, 7%, an increase in grade 4 of 1%, and in grade 5, an increase of 11%, to make a combined 3 through 5 year reading of a 1% increase. I think you'll find out through the data throughout the night that my 5th grade team was exceptionally strong in most of the areas. And that comes through the collaboration that they had. They were veteran teachers, young, and very interested in data and collection of data and how to implement and use that in the classroom. 3-year writing results would be the 2013-14. We only increased by 1% in an area that we're wanting to focus again on this year. The accreditation status, we were accredited with warning in math. 2013 and 14, you can see in 3rd grade, we were down 9%. 4th grade, we were down 6%, and again in 5th grade, we were up 36%, with an increase of combined of 1% for the entire year. And again, our 5th grade team did a wonderful job. The state SOL science results, we are very strong in science and social studies across the board. You can see again, in grade 3 was a 12% increase, and in grade 5 we had a 20% increase. When we were looking at the SOL history results, grade 3 had a drop of 3%, grade 4 dropped 1%, and my grade 5 had a 22% increase. Strategies that we're using this year that are currently in place as we speak. The increased collaborative opportunities for our general and special education teachers. Last year, our special education teachers were doing more of a pull-out program, and they had their own classroom. And this year, at the beginning, in the summertime, myself and my leadership team, Dr. Chappell and Mrs. Pichon, we discussed the issues concerning special education, and we decided to move all but one of our special education teachers into the classroom. So they have an assigned grade level. They are working specifically with a group of teachers, could be 1 to maybe 2 per grade level. They have their desk in the classroom. They collaborate with them. They model with the classroom teachers. It is a very inclusive program that we are exceptionally proud of, and we've seen the results through our last set of benchmarks that a lot of our special education students are doing better in the classroom because of this type of program. We too are also implementing the Foundations Reading program with greater fidelity than we did last year. One of the things we're really focusing on with the Foundations program, though, is really working with our paraprofessionals. This is a program that paraprofessionals can easily work with our children. And since it's K through 2, we're having Ms. O'Donnell's coming in and working on a weekly to bi-weekly basis with our paraprofessionals who are in K through 2. And she teaches them how to use this program in the classroom. So the classroom teacher models it initially in their reading program, and then when they go to the guided reading, the paraprofessional will pull the students off the side and work far more in depth with them. And again, we think this is a much better program, but again, it's using that paraprofessional that's so important to us. We're going to develop and utilize a data tracking sheet this year. It is actually currently in progress. We're using it now. The data tracking is a little more user-friendly than the data notebooks that we think we had from last year. It really allows us to look through all the gap groups. It allows us to take a look at math, science, social studies. We get a chance to take a look at all of our different ethnicities, and it helps us a great deal. And we think that throughout this year, as we use that, we're going to be better prepared to deal with some of the issues concerning the data. The nice thing about this tracking sheet is that I hope this sheet is going to be able to track students from the time they come to Mac Ben in kindergarten, and should be able to track the student all the way through 5th grade. So if I'm a 1st grade teacher, I can take a look at last year's data and get a really good idea of where this child is and where I think I can take this child to that next level. We also monitor lesson plans via Google Drive. Mrs. Pichon, my assistant principal, is having all of our teachers place all of their lesson plans in Google, so we're easily accessible. Our academic coach looks at it on a weekly basis, and so do we. We have what we call a PLC. Every week we meet with our teachers for 45 minutes during their planning time to talk about their lesson plans, to talk about the data from the benchmarks, from the PALS testing, and this is a great opportunity to be able to use, again, the monitoring those lesson plans. Last, we have developed monthly look-fors. In the summertime, I sat down with my leadership team, and we discussed what should we be looking for as administration when we first start school up. On that first month, what should we be looking at? Word wall should be up. We should see the lesson plans should be completed. We should see number lines and those types of things. But every single month, we are now up in the ante on our teachers, and we're asking them to do different things. And we talk with them collaboratively a great deal about what our look-fors are going to consist of. For example, this month we're looking at a spiral view, and we're looking at their formative assessments and seeing how that formative assessment matches the lesson plans. We're looking at the amount of time that students are engaged in actual lessons, not just listening to the teacher, but they're actually engaged in work. And then looking again at our guided math and guided reading. We are realigning our Title I teachers to support our students. Last year, our Title I teachers were spread across grades K through 5. This year, what we've done is we have assigned every Title I teacher a specific grade. So they're responsible for working with those teachers in that grade level in reading. And they're modeling for the teachers. They're working with those teachers who may struggle a little bit with reading. They're working with the guided reading component with the classroom teachers. And again, they're also working with their own teachers, with the students who are struggling. One of the really nice things is that they're providing a lot more of maybe the professional development that we don't always get a chance to get to our teachers. They're able to do that on a quarterly basis, and we're doing that now by having our teachers come out and work with our Title I teachers to develop better lesson plans, take a look at our assessments, and to take a look at how we're formally assessing at the end of every lesson how well our students are doing. We have implemented the Words Their Way in grades K through 5, and that's done by Dr. Chappell, our academic coach. We provide quality feedback and support to our teachers. Those teachers who are struggling a little bit in reading or math, science, or social studies, we're coming in with both our academic coach and the administration, along with our Title I teachers to provide that additional support, along with SAO, who's been wonderful in coming in and out to our school and working with us. We are monitoring formative assessments more closely. We're trying to make sure that after a teacher teaches a lesson, how do you know which student really got what you taught? And then what do you do with that data? How do you use that data to plan the next day's lesson? Do you just continue on even though you may have had 40% of your class didn't get it? Talk to us about how you're remediating your lessons. What are you doing in the classroom to help those kids who didn't get it? And more importantly, what are you doing to help those kids who got it and want to take it to the next level? Those are really important concepts that we are passing on to our teachers. Mrs. Pichon has implemented the civility program at MacBen this year. And civility is such a simple word, and it comes at a simple thing, but it's getting students to say good morning, thank you. How are you doing? To be able to open up to a lot of those concepts. We have looked at our data, and as far as our discipline data is concerned, and we're not seeing those frequent flyers. We're seeing students not so much doing 5, 6, 7, 8 offenses. We're able to nip that down to 2 and 3, and we're continuing to work on that. But that civility program also comes with teachers as well. How do you respond to a child who is disrespectful? How do you respond to a parent who constantly is yelling and screaming and getting upset with you? How do you work through some of those things? Continued strategies. We're building relationships. This summer, we had the opportunity to work with the YMCA camp near Lakeland High School, and we had team building activities for our entire staff. There was only one person left in our building that day while we worked with our entire staff in developing these team bonding activities, and they were wonderful, and they really gave us a chance to kind of come together. We're doing the whole brain training for our staff that Dr. Wrights had introduced to the city, and it's wonderful for our students who are special ed and need those different modalities. And we find it all the way across the board. Students are doing well with it, and our teachers are taking that as they feel comfortable with it and are working with it. We collaborate with supervisors and specialists about our benchmark data. After every one of our benchmarks, specialists come from downtown to work with us to talk about the test, work with our teachers and say, hey, talk to me about how you taught this lesson. How did you teach this question? How are you working with this? And then we found through many of our conversations that either we weren't teaching it properly or that we could have enhanced it just a little bit more. And then finally, we've implemented our guided math with a focus on a spiral view. And the guided math looks a lot like the guided reading. And it's been a wonderful program for us, and we're seeing a lot of change and remediation during that guided math time. And that is all that I have, and I'll take your questions.
These astounding results that you have from the 5th grade that you attributed to your team of teachers in the 5th grade. Well, what if you took those 5th grade teachers and put them in the 3rd grade? Would you get the same results? I mean, are we talking about a combination of the students and the teachers? Are we talking about the teachers have just performed these miracles in the 5th grade
Many of these fifth grade teachers have come from third and fourth grade. The principal before me made some changes before I came, and he had put together this team. One of the unique things about the fifth grade was I had 2 tutors that were working with my fifth grade team throughout the year, and they were amazing tutors, and they really connected with the teachers. More importantly, they connected with the students, and we saw some great successes through our tutoring program just because of that. My third grade scores, I'm going to say that they're due to I have Mrs. Henderlight decided to go out and have a baby, and in March. And that really made it difficult for us to bring somebody in that had the same content knowledge that she did to be able to provide that support for the kids. We certainly came in with my academic coach and worked with the person, the long-term stuff that we brought in, but she wasn't Mrs. Henderlight. And we really missed her an awful lot, and I think our scores show that.
She's back.
She is back.
Thank goodness.
I was not going to let her go. I brought her on board. I can just keep her with me.
Mr. Lefebvre, I know that you said something about tracking your students from kindergarten through third grade. Now, are you tracking the ones that are not doing well and
We're
providing?
going to track students kindergarten through fifth grade. When we say tracking, we're going to be able to tell on a benchmark test who didn't do well in here and what are we specifically doing for them. We're going to be able to track students. If I was in kindergarten, I'll be able to tell you by the end of my time at MacBen, if a child was in kindergarten, I'll be able to see their data all the way through fifth grade.
The important thing is that what are you going to do with that data once you have it? And these
Exactly right.
That's the important thing. is it
Exactly.
not?
And it's developing those strategies. It's taking a look at those kids and saying, okay, so where did this child specifically struggle with? And what are we going to do is provide as far as remediation? What are we looking at the foundations? Where's the child scoring in foundations? Where's the remediation in math and science and social studies?
How many Title I teachers did you say you had? One for each grade level?
Yes, sir. I have 4. I have actual 4 Title I teachers, and so we have developed that real. We found the need for that strong foundation in K through 3 for MacBen, that real strong reading foundation, because that's what's going to help take us to down the road. We're going to see the success from that, but also those Title I teachers are working with our 4th and 5th grade teachers as well.
Mr. Lefebvre, good report here. When you came in a couple of years ago, I guess it was 2 years ago as a new principal, 1 year?
Yes, ma'am.
Has been one?
It's only been 1.
Only been 1. I think we talked about to the parents when we visited about disciplinary problems.
Yes, ma'am.
We're very high. What would you say the percentage of droppage has been in the 1 year you've been?
Well, the 1 year that I've been there, probably we've dropped about 15%, I would say, maybe 10 or 15%, maybe not as much as we've liked. We again, with the civility program that Mrs. Pichon is putting together, I think it's going to be a wonderful program. We just had some students who continue to be disruptive in the classroom, and we were not going to tolerate that. We weren't going to allow them to take away from that instruction that's so important for everybody else. And I think the year before that I came, I knew the 5th grade really struggled with their discipline. So I think as an administrator, being proactive and getting out there and doing an assembly in advance the second day of school to let the kids know what my standards are, and then letting the kids know and when they come back from Christmas break, we're going to have another assembly, and these are our standards, and this is what we're going to follow through on. And we've seen some great results this year to this point.
That's great. You presented a report with a wish list. I'm sure it was a wish list with the percentages you said you wanted to meet by the end of the year.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you feel about that 1 year that you have spent with the
Well, I thought we made a lot of successes in many grade levels. Obviously, in the 5th grade, it's nowhere where I want to be. And I guess I talked last year, too, about how Dr. Whitney and his expectations of his principals and of his teachers, I firmly still hold that. I'm glad that we didn't go back. We didn't regress in any of the areas. However, we're certainly going to move our way up as far as making more percentage accreditation points in math and the reading component.
Great. Good job for this year.
Congratulate all the principals that are here. You're an outstanding group of individuals and administrators. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lefebvre. As you can see, all 3 principals are working hard along with their staff. I'm sorry? Sure, go ahead.
Let's take a minute, and if you would like to leave, it not be the time to go. I know if you're interested in staying, fine, but if you'd like to go, it not be the time to leave.
This was finishing up with saying that the principals are excited about their task at hand as well as their staff. You can see that they're working hard, they're looking at the data, and they're doing what's needed. And what might be needed at one school may be totally different from another school, and I think that's important to point out as well. So I commend them for their efforts and look forward to future success. Next on the agenda, you can see we have listed state and local assessments overview. During our last board meeting, you had asked that you get some information about how where we are with the development of our local assessments, what the requirements are with our state assessments. This evening, I'm going to ask Mrs. Chavis, as well as some active team members, as well as Mr. Dowie and Mrs. Connor, to share with you and Mr. Edwards the state requirements, where we are with the state assessment, the SOLs, and where we are with preparing for those SOLs by developing our local assessments. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Chavis.
And as Superintendent mentioned, we have a team that will come before you. Just to give you an overview, there were some changes at the state level. Mr. Edwards will share those changes with you and how they will impact us as a school system. And then Mrs. Connor, Mr. Dowie, and a couple of our teachers who've been working with us to make sure we are aligned with the state assessments will bring a presentation with you about our local assessments. Okay.
This presentation is on page 41.
Good evening, Chairman Dobransky, Dr. Whitney, members of the school board. As Ms. Chavis and Dr. Whitney alluded to, this presentation that will be shared with you is an overview of the state assessment program as well as our local assessment program. I will be sharing with you the first two items, followed by some of my colleagues sharing items 3 and 4. The 2014 General Assembly eliminated 5 SOL tests beginning this school year. Those tests are the Grade 3 History, the Grade 3 Science, the Grade 5 Writing, United States History 2, 1865, previously administered in Grade 5, United States History 1865 to present, previously administered in Grade 6. There are no SOL changes to the high school SOL testing program. The law that eliminated the previous 5 SOL tests also requires each local school board to certify that it has provided instruction in the content areas of the tests that are being eliminated, and to administer alternative assessments where the 5 tests were previously assessed by the state. We have to make sure that we are continuing to assess in those 5 SOL content areas. Our current benchmark testing satisfies that requirement for the 2014-2015 school year. Each school division is required to draft a plan detailing how it will develop new assessments for the 2015-2016 school year to address those same SOLs and beyond. Another requirement of the law is that the Virginia Studies and the Civics and Economics SOL tests be administered to all students. Suffolk covers that criteria because we assessed our 4th graders with the Virginia Studies and our 7th graders with the Civics and Economics assessment. So we have always met that requirement. So that's not asking us to make any changes.
If I may, Mr. Edwards, I think it's important to point out that this is the flexibility that the state has allowed divisions to take advantage of as far as not having the traditional multiple choice tests. And while we support that idea, we didn't feel that we could, in the best interest of our teachers and our students, create something different than what we already have in place. We are going to be applying with a grant, a collaborative grant with other divisions to present or to provide us with technical assistance in developing such an authentic assessment, which may include performance-based assessment versus the traditional multiple choice test. So while we're very pleased that the legislative mandate is in place, this year we didn't feel like it was feasible for us to change what we're already doing, but we certainly do have plans to modify what we are currently doing for these tests that have been eliminated. Thank you.
Also, a new requirement that will be occurring for the first time this school year is in grade 6 mathematics, and this only applies to grade 6 mathematics. The students will be taking a computer adaptive test. And that starts this spring when our 6th graders take the SOL test. The computer adaptive test is also an online administration. The computer adaptive test is a computerized test that every student, based on the student's responses, the next question is individually adjusted. And it will be based on, the next item is tied to the rigor. So if a student gets item 1 correctly, then item 2, the rigor would be a little more challenging for that student. If the student gets item 1 wrong, then the next item, the rigor will not be as difficult. So the test will be adapting as the student is taking this mathematics test. Compared to a traditional test where students receive a typical form, they may all have the same version of a particular form, therefore they are all responding to the same questions. On the computer adaptive test, you can have 10 students with 10 different testing paths as far as meeting the SOL requirements. The grade 6 students would be familiar with computer adaptive testing by the time they're ready to take it in the spring. As a division, we administer the NWEA MAP assessment to our students 3 times a year, which is an adaptive assessment. So our students will be taking that assessment throughout the school year, so they would have had 3 opportunities to have exposure and experience with an adaptive test. So them seeing it on the SOLs for the first time, an adaptive test, that will not be the case.
As we continue the presentation, we'll share more information on the local assessment. At this time, I want to introduce a few other staff members who are assisting with the presentation this evening. As mentioned earlier, Mrs. Connor will come up in just a few minutes to share some information. We also have 3 teachers. We have Tiffany Truitt from Kennedy Middle School, Tammy Patton from Driver, and Jennifer Soriano from Driver, who will share the involvement of teachers and the PD and the instructional impact of the assessments. The first bullet, the reduction, I'll share some numbers with you in just a moment, and we'll continue with the other topics of, again, the instructional team responsibilities. That would include central office. And then the final 3 bullets will be shared by the teachers mentioned on the previous slide. First, just to pause a moment on the next slide, you have a reduction in number of assessments, and this would include state assessments on the screen by content area. If you may recall that 2 years ago we began to reduce division-made assessments so that we could increase as much as possible instructional time in the classroom, which by decreasing certain assessments we would make, then the teachers would provide, or they would assess formally or informally through their own teacher-made items. Now, I need to mention that these assessments that you see listed here in number, they're not all large assessments. Some of these are quick checks that you might find in the primary grades. Some of these may be brief quizzes that you might find in middle school English classrooms. Some teachers refer to them as A and B quizzes. So not all of the assessments that you see totaled in this chart would be longer assessments. But over time, we've reduced the number of assessments that we make with input from staff members at the schools, and we've reduced, as you see in the last column. And again, that's by content. The next slide would give you a peek in the numbers based on grade level. And you can see over time the number of assessments that have been reduced. Now, in this number, you would see less of the quick checks and the A's and B's and the ongoings, the short quizzes. You would see in that number the past 2 years, the MAP assessments, they would be included, and you would also include SOL testing in those numbers. But as you can see over time, in these 5 grade levels, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11, the reduction in division tests. The goal would be, again, giving more time back to the teachers for their instructional time and allowing them to formally or informally assess students.
If I may interrupt here, Mr. Dowie, I think one of the things that we all agree with is that our students are being tested too often. But it's a matter of maintaining that balance and making certain that they're prepared for the assessment. With this, what we've done is we've been responsive to what teachers have said, and some of that is we're testing so much and so often that I feel like I can't teach for mastery. And the goal is to be able to teach for mastery by eliminating the assessments that we feel like we can eliminate and still get a good assessment of where children are before they take that, before they actually take the assessment or the SOL assessment. We also have had some discussion, and we'll get into this a little later, about perhaps letting some of these assessments serve as diagnostic tools only and not necessarily be graded, but diagnostic to help us guide our instruction.
As we shared earlier, and you heard from 6 of our principals, we're working very diligently to align our written, taught, and tested curriculum. In terms of what the instructional department does in the supporting of these schools, that alignment to increase rigor, and you hear a lot about rigor and alignment. What does that really mean? So we actually brought tonight for you to hear directly from the teachers on their involvement and their understanding of this as well. Of course, the instructional department uses the Virginia Department of Education Standards of Learning to develop the tested curriculum. And the curriculum actually includes the curriculum framework, the blueprints, and the pacing guide. We've built curriculum guides for teachers to use throughout the year. We also develop and align the curriculum based on a state rubric. There's a state lesson plan rubric, observation rubric, and assessment rubric that when we're writing these assessments, we're actually checking to make sure that we're teaching the content and the level of rigor that's expected, the Bloom's taxonomy that we talked earlier. We've got to teach these kids to be critical thinkers. It's not just giving the information back, it's using the information they're learning, analyzing, synthesizing, and giving that information back. So we're teaching kids to be thinkers and lifelong learners. We've also unpacked to determine the level of rigor in our local assessments to provide professional development to our teachers. The State Department of Education has been working with us for several years, coming in to show us, and as we do academic reviews, we actually use these rubrics that I discussed when we're looking at lesson plans, principal observations. As they're doing observations, how do those lesson plans align with what is actually being taught, and then what is tested, and how do we align ourselves with the test? We provide opportunities for teacher involvement. They serve on curriculum development for the State Department. They serve on curriculum development and test writing for our local assessments, and they're doing it within their schools, and you're going to hear about that tonight as well. We solicit feedback from our teachers. We have steering committees. We have grade level meetings, principal meetings. Our instructional department works directly with our schools. There's someone that serves on each leadership team, school leadership team from our department, and gets feedback and gathers information which is a two-way street. We learn more about what schools are doing, and we're able to help support those buildings. As you saw tonight from Mrs. Chavis and the Pyramid, where we're able to tier our support and be able to give more specific, intensive support to the buildings. Following me is Tiffany Truitt from JFK, John F. Kennedy Middle School, who has served on state content review, local content support, and she works directly with her school.
May I ask a question before you?
Absolutely.
I've heard you use this word, and the principals use this word too. What is unpacking? I see it, but I don't understand what it actually means. It's a new word.
It is a new word, and our teachers are going to explain more of that as well. I don't want to take away their thunder, and we'll end that tonight if they don't. But it's actually taking the curriculum framework, our state curriculum framework, and looking at what is expected that teachers are supposed to teach, what are children to learn, and how do we get there. They tell us our curriculum. The standards are there. There's also something called the essential knowledge and skills. What is the Bloom's taxonomy level in which we're needing to teach that? It's not about just giving information back. It's students using it. And teachers are now developing lesson plans, and you're going to see that tonight from our teachers on how they apply that.
I understand everything you've said. I understand the Bloom's taxonomy, essential knowledge, but how would you use that word in a sentence, unpacking? I mean, I know you can unpack a suitcase, but I just don't understand what that means.
You're taking the curriculum framework, you're using what is expected to be taught, and you're coming up with a lesson on how that's going to be taught. What is it we want the children to know at the end, and how are we going to get there? We're using the verbs. Are they going to apply that knowledge? Are they going to analyze the skills? And we're actually taking apart the curriculum framework. We're unpacking it. That's where that word unpacking comes, and determining what specific information, diving very deeply into the specific objective in which the child needs to know, and how are they going to get there. And kids learn at different levels and different modalities. So that's where those strong teachers, good teaching comes in. One child may be able to read it to get there. Some child might need to do it, see it. So there's different modalities that follow. And it's actually a part of one of our teachers' presentations on how they impact. So I'll come back
so
at the
you
end.
take something that you need to learn, you take it apart and and figure out how to teach it to different students.
You teach that standard to the level of mastery. How do you know that?
And I think if I may, I think it does include actually breaking down that particular essential knowledge. It may be 2 or 3 sentences, but you're going to break it down to look at the verbs to say, what does this mean when it says investigate, or we'll be able to analyze? What's the first step that I need to do in order to get the student?
Okay, so you're taking that apart and then and figuring it how you're going to get there.
Yes.
That's an interesting new word. Thank you. Amazing.
This is Mrs. Truitt from John F. Kennedy. All right.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As an 8th grade teacher at John F. Kennedy Middle School, I will be the first one to say that when the new standards came about, we're still suffering some growing pains. But one of the things I love about working in Suffolk, and it's the only school district I've ever worked in, and it's the only school district I ever plan on working in, is that it allows teachers to be involved in every aspect of curriculum development and test writing development, and that's really what I want to talk about tonight. SAO has put together a committee of teachers that will be helping to write and edit our local assessments, and I agree that we need to cut back on the number of assessments for our students and make the ones that we actually give valuable and meaningful. I had the pleasure of serving on the writing committee this summer for the VDOE, and I won't sugarcoat it for you. It is going to be a very, very difficult test, and that's no matter what the socioeconomic background of your students are. But instead of making excuses, I think we need to get to work. And one of the things by serving on this test writing committee is teachers will serve 2 purposes. One, when our students take that test in the spring, they will not be surprised by the complexity or rigor of the test because they will have seen it on every local assessment. Two, by having teachers write and edit these tests and not just leaving it with instructional specialists downtown, teachers are going to familiarize themselves with these standards, unpack them, understand the verbiage, because they are very general. Investigate. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like on a question? And if I'm going to write those questions, I'm going to have to understand what that means. And I'm really excited about working on that committee. Also, as a steering rep, I get to go to citywide meetings, and I'm not sure how well you are familiar with the dreaded TEI questions, but they're technology-enhanced questions, and I can guarantee you that they are being used in the classroom daily. Some teachers are using them as warm-ups. Some teachers are designing learning plans and contracts with their students to work on outside of school. I know at my school, we sit down in our planning meetings and we create 5 or 10 a week, and we upload them to our Google Drive. You need some on verbs, go up on the Google Drive, try them out. And I know the next question will be, well, what about the students who don't have technology, and how can they practice those skills? Having served on the committee for the VDOE, the point of the technology question is not to test the ability of the child's ability to use technology. It is still to test comprehension and analysis. So if they can do that piece, I'm fully comfortable they can drag and drop. That's not the issue. So we just got to work a little bit harder and step up our game, and I'm fully confident that we can do it. I don't know if anyone questions or...
If I may ask Mrs. Truitt, because I have met since the last time we had a board meeting, I met with several teachers, and we talked a lot about the technology-enhanced items. And in some instances, it's on paper and pencil. And my first response was, how is this practicing for the technology-enhanced items? And as she indicated, it's more of the process if it's on paper and pencil. Describe what that might look like when it's on paper and pencil,
Sure.
for example.
And unfortunately, with being so tied to a multiple choice assessment for so many years, children have gotten quite used to having one definite answer. And with technology enhanced questions, there is more than one answer. And they're not going to say, hey guys, there's 2 answers here. It says circle all the answers that are correct. So you might have a compare and contrast 3-circle Venn diagram. And you have multiple things that can be placed anywhere in that Venn diagram. You have to choose not only what goes in there, what does not go in there, but also where it goes. So it's that complexity piece and that rigor piece that we have to work with. And, it's difficult. It's going to be tough, but we can't keep saying, the test, the 9 weeks test is too hard. That's how hard the state test is going to be. And so we have to work for that.
And if I can add, and I'll get more to this, but having met with about 4 teacher groups since the last time we've met, one of the things that I think we do agree to, for the most part, there are good test items, but do we need the length of the test to be as it is early on, specifically for our lower grades? In other words, if there's a 40-item test during this first administration, why couldn't we break that down to 15, build it up the next time they take their next assessment to maybe 30, and then 35, so that it can be the mock test right before they actually take the SOL. I think we are in agreement with that. But we also found out better communication as far as letting teachers know, here's the complete test. There's some flexibility as far as when you want to administer it, provided that you stay within the window. There's a window because we try to use it as a standardized assessment so we can collect the data and analyze it as well. Thank you, Mrs. Truitt.
It really doesn't seem like it's more difficult as much as it is a whole different way of thinking. Because it's like you get a test in one language and now you're getting it in a different language. They'll get it eventually.
Name is.
Hello, I'm Tammy Patton from Driver Elementary, and I'm here to present the portion on staff development. As far as the unpacking, because that is an unusual term, it does seem kind of strange, but like Mrs. Connor said, what it means is looking at the SOL and at the complexity that we need to teach it, because teaching fraction doesn't necessarily mean just teaching fractions. They have to be able to analyze those fractions, apply it in different situations. So our instructional team does a good job of giving us professional development opportunities throughout the year to help us understand what's written, taught, and tested, what the curriculum is, but then how are we teaching it? Are we teaching it at that level of rigor that the kids need to master those state assessments at the end of the year. And then whether our assessments are meeting that requirement as well. And so in order to do this, we first have to learn how to unpack those standards and look at those and make sure that we're at that level we need to be. And last year, when it came down from the State Department, the teacher evaluation, lesson plan tool, rubric, as soon as they found out about it, they brought it down to us and then told us this is what the State Department is using, this is what it looks like, and this is where we're headed. So we started with the unpacking first, and then we worked our way down to writing the objectives, and we have to include certain numbers in our objectives, like 100% of the students will master this skill with an 80% level by the end of this lesson, and then how we'll do it. And then we worked on to moving on to formative and summative assessment, and then how you build those. So we've had grade level, citywide grade level meetings. We have steering committee meetings, which Mrs. Truitt and I are both steering committee members for our school. And we go to the meetings, bring that information back to our schools, and disseminate that information at staff meetings. We have grade level meetings in our buildings. Supervisors from the SAO come down, like Dr. Walsh came to our building when we do grade level meetings on Tuesday and met with each grade level about the verbiage and then how you word the objectives according to the state rubric. And we have a member from the SAO that's a representative is on our leadership team, and they come and meet with us when we have our leadership meetings and our data meetings when we discuss our data and then where we're going from our data. So we have support from them as well. Kim McGrath and Katrina Carey have come and explained what unpacking the standards looks like and walked us through a scenario so that we'd become familiar with that. Over the summer, we've had different professional development activities. An awesome one that was provided this summer was for teachers on linking reading and writing instruction for fiction and nonfiction, because nonfiction across the board is one of the areas where our kids struggle. And we had an awesome presentation from Beth Steele. And a lot of the teachers have kept in contact with her to get resources from her to increase our rigor of our reading questions and our reading instruction. So in closing, I just wanted to say that Suffolk provides frequent professional development opportunities to help us and support us in the unpacking of these standards to make sure that we're meeting the rigor in our lessons, our tests that we write ourselves to prepare them for the benchmarks and then ultimately that SOL test at the end of the year.
I think Mrs. Soriano is next, and she's a teacher at Driver Elementary teaching second grade?
Fourth grade.
I'm sorry?
Fourth grade.
Okay, I'm sorry. They changed you. All right.
I did. I moved up. I'm going to speak about unpacking the standard in alignment with the written, taught, and tested curriculum. The process actually did begin last school year, and it continues. We want to ensure that what's written in the curriculum framework, looking at that cognitive level of the standard, is taught through lesson planning, solid data-based instruction, and is tested both through formative and summative assessments. Lesson planning. The district does require key components for us to have in our lesson plans. However, they've been flexible with the format, understanding that various grade levels and schools may need to use various formats for their lesson plans. There's an understanding that we need differentiation just like our students need differentiation. The district has provided support for lesson planning through the use of the new pacing guides, and those pacing guides do include the SOL, a description of the SOL, the essential understanding, which is the big idea, ideas for higher level questioning, increasing that rigor in our classrooms, and also other valuable resources, and they are really awesome, and our SAO should be really commended on putting those together. And they did receive input from the teachers. Dr. Walsh, as Ms. Patton did share, she did visit Driver Elementary, and she did provide professional development on the developing of our objectives, unpacking that standard. She did follow up also on that development by giving us feedback on our lesson plans. So we were able to send our lesson plans to her and say, can you look at this and see is there anything we need to change or add? And she provided that feedback. Tara Worley, our district wellness coach, has visited and modeled lessons throughout the district that engage students both physically and mentally, so she's tying in those pieces. Our gifted resource teachers often model tiered lessons to assist with challenging our gifted learners. Our inclusion special education teachers assist with modification of assignments to meet the needs of our special education students. Our formative and summative assessments, that's been a big focus this year as well. The district has provided opportunities for us to share our own forms of formative and summative assessments at our district grade level meetings. And this just provides a powerful opportunity for us to collaborate as a district. And I know that that has been something we've really wanted to do across the district and say, okay, what are you doing here? And it just that opportunity, the SAO listening to us and saying, okay, well, we hear you. You understand what a formative and summative assessment is. Bring what you have and let's share. So that's been a great opportunity. The next item is talking about data and data-driven instruction. Our data notebooks. This has been an ongoing process throughout the year. And fortunately, once again, the district has said educators need differentiation as well. So we are required to review and analyze our data and use that to drive our instruction, which is what good educators do. The district has allowed building administrators to determine how those data notebooks are assembled. This is very beneficial because just as with the lesson plan format, not everybody needs the same kind of data analysis. Some of us need to have it in a notebook, or some of us may need to have it in a folder. That's been able to be differentiated based on the building. Each building also has grade level data meetings every week where they review and discuss the data for the school, as well as develop strategies to assist in the remediation of skills and enhancing the skills to meet the needs of all learners. Each building has a data team that meets regularly to discuss and analyze the data from the state SOL, the Students' Performance by Question, the SPBQ, the local benchmark test, PALS, as well as the NWA MAP testing. This allows the building to see common threads throughout the grade levels and to use that information to implement strategies for remediation and enrichment. The data teams are extremely beneficial because they allow us to talk within grade levels. I was just at one yesterday, and it was great because I could say, we at Driver, we have Florence Bowser, and so our Florence Bowser teachers come over and we all meet together and say, we're able to say, well, we can do that. We can start implementing some of those word problem strategies in kindergarten and first grade, so it's very beneficial. SOL preparation, this is an ongoing process, and it doesn't start in May when we're getting ready for the test. It actually starts in June once we get the results from the test from that year. The process continues throughout the summer and into the new school year, and the district has demonstrated an understanding of this process through their benchmark assessments, because often we'll see later on we might have an assessment and it might include something that was tested previously, so it keeps that information fresh. They also have encouraged us to use spiral reviews within our classrooms and our buildings. Finally, the district has also encouraging a collaborative as well as a collective approach to lesson planning, formative and summative assessments, data-driven instruction, and SOL preparation. We understand the team mentality that together everybody achieves more, and this will help our stars, our students, to shine. I just want to leave you with this one quote. What we want to see is the child in pursuit of knowledge and not knowledge in pursuit of the child. George Bernard Shaw. Thank you.
Questions?
I don't have questions, but I want to say this was an excellent report from those three young ladies. When we get it from the people who are actually working in the classrooms, and they tell us what they're getting and what the system is offering to them, it makes you feel proud. It's great, and we really enjoyed it. I mean, some of us have been out of education for a long time, but as we listen to you, not out of education, but out of the classroom as such, we now can focus on what you're doing and why we are defending you to help you do those jobs that you are expected to do in the public school. Thank you. They were excellent reports. Not giving up administrators that come sometime with the report, but that was just great, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I'd like to make a comment as well. I took a couple of tests, the first grade science test and the third grade reading test, and I'll tell you right now, the questions were analytical, provided synthesis and analysis, and very little comprehension. You had to be able to think and do and manipulate, and I want to congratulate you all for putting those together. I know that it was no easy task, so you all are addressing the rubric of making sure that we think before we just answer anything. I thought those questions were critical, and I won't tell you, I missed 2 out of the first 10 questions in science.
And if I may say this, that last month after we had the presentations or the speakers, I've met with several groups. My staff and I have met with several teacher groups, and I have takeaways. That's my style, to say, what are we taking away from this? And there are a number of things. One, we need to continue with quality assessments and make sure that they're quality assessments. We need to consider or revisit the length of the assessments. We need to also improve communication. Sometimes we encourage and we say what needs to be done, but what we're missing sometimes is the why. Why is this important? Why does it need to be done? Continue to take advantage of teacher input. I think that's important. In fact, I'm glad that you recognize the teachers who were actively involved with creating the test. In fact, we have some of them here. If you were actively involved with creating the test, please stand up, because I'd like to commend you for the work that you've done. If you've worked with creating a test,
He probably left.
thank
now.
you. Yes. And of course, I may have said this before, but the pacing, we need to revisit the pacing as we do each year. I believe that concludes, well, the only last thing as far as the superintendent's report is our calendar of special events. And if you'll, yes, ma'am.
Dr. Whitney, could I ask one last question about the SOLs and the change? I can understand now why across the state the scores went way down, because I'm thinking about when I was in school and we took standardized tests, and they were multiple choice tests, and they were timed. So it seems to me that with this new style of testing, it's got to take longer to think those things through. So are they all untimed now?
They're untimed. In fact, when we actually administer the SOL tests in the spring, there are some students who take anywhere, in some instances, 3 hours. We had 3 hours to finish. I'm sorry, longer than that, all day?
I can appreciate that, because when you have to really think something through, that happens more quickly in some minds than others.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On page 49, you'll see the special events calendar. I want to point out that tomorrow is Parent-Teacher Conference Day on the 14th, and you can go on the website to find out the hours. I will say, please pay special attention to the time that teachers won't be available due to trying to schedule a lunch break for them. Also, on Saturday, we have Suffolk Parent University. That's at Kings Fork Middle School. It'll be from 8:30 to 12:30. This is an opportunity where we provide different strategies and talk about different programs that are readily available to our parents. So we would ask that parents please take advantage of that. American Education Week is November 17th through the 21st, and of course we're out during our Thanksgiving holiday, November 27th through the 28th. We did have our College and Career Readiness Fair last Saturday, I believe it was, and we had over 450 participants. This is a fair where we talk about students' next steps as far as when they leave us, but we also talk about students' transition from middle school to high school. So we were very pleased to see 450 participants. That concludes the superintendent's report. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to ask one question, Dr. Whitney. Have we addressed the questions of all those people that came to us last month as far as the grading of the test and the use for final grade as far as promotion is concerned, because they were concerned that some of those...
We're in the middle of addressing that now. As I said, I'm still meeting with teacher groups, getting their feedback, getting their interpretation, and then we'll be providing responses. Those responses will go through my teacher advisory council, which in turn will go back to each teacher as to where we are. As far as this year, it might look differently from what we do next year. As I said earlier, one of the considerations is to consider using our local assessments for diagnostic purposes versus grading. But we can't commit to that as of right now because we're still collecting data.
I think the question was that the tests were so, I guess, not comprehensive or concise. There were some outliers that they couldn't provide for, some spelling errors. I don't think it was spelling errors, but whatever.
There was a mishap with our English assessments district-wide. When we create these assessments, we actually use it through a computer system, and one has to save the document when they make the changes. That particular step did not take place, and the rough draft, if you will, or rough draft, was sent to the print shop and was printed and distributed to the classrooms. When we found that to be the case, we pulled them, if indeed teachers had not administered them, and then we put out the final version. Now, I'd like to sit here and say that the final version had no mistakes. There may have been some mistakes on there, some errors. That's going to happen with any teacher-made tests, and not just teacher-made tests, but with any type of document. But yes, we have addressed that, and we'll continue to address it. I think another huge issue is the fact that because the test is bound does not mean that it must all be given at that one time.
I think that's critical. Would you repeat that, please?
Because the test is bound does not mean that we have to give the entire test at one time.
Okay, now the last question I'm going to ask you is this. You have a student who's an all-A student, gets A's in every class, and doesn't get a passing grade on his on that citywide test. How are we gonna? Can we actually keep that student from being promoted if he's an all-A student?
It really depends, because you remember your promotion policy is not just one factor. It's not just the student's grades, it's not just the SOL, and it's certainly not just the local assessment's performance. And that's one of the reasons. But when we see that happens, if a student's grades are not aligned with the local assessments, not aligned with the state assessment, we have to step back from it and say we need to look at what's happening instructionally. Right. And that's not to point the finger at anyone, but we have to say, one, is there an alignment with our tests? You heard many of them talk about the written, taught, and tested curriculum. That's what we're talking about when we say we're looking for that alignment to make sure that that's happening.
Okay, I think that's all the questions I have.
I have a question. Is any of this, when we talk about promotion, I know that the General Assembly and SOLs and all those things, the standards of quality and as well as the standards of learning, have a connection with how much you can do with what you can do. If students constantly fail the SOLs, can they pass? Are there any connections with the state law with regard to what you can do, or do we have the right as a school system to say whether they pass it or not, we're going to pass you?
We do. We have policies specifically in the high school, on the high school level, as far as the verified credit and being considered a ninth grader or a 10th grader, depending on how many credits you have obtained. But does the state require the passing of an assessment to go to the next grade? No, it does not. There's local flexibility there.
Okay, board members, if you look at the consent agenda, please, at this time, and see if any items need to be taken off of it. Moved.
I recommend a move for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
Unfinished business, 2014-15 objectives of school board goals. Do we have to?
Yes. As you know, during our work session, we did make some modifications to the recommended objectives that I shared with you during our last meeting. We are asking that these goals be approved based on the changes and modifications that were discussed during the earlier session.
We need a motion.
I move that we accept the goals as they have been revised.
Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
New business, public speakers and non-agenda topics. Melinda Stevenson, bus rules, please.
We have revised for approving the school calendar.
Good evening.
Go ahead.
My name's Melinda Stevenson. I'm here tonight to let you be aware of...
Speak into we can't hear you.
My name's Melinda Stevenson. I'm here tonight to let you all be aware of a situation that my daughter experienced on the bus and what I've had to go through in order to get the rules for. On October the 23rd, my daughter, it was her 11th birthday. She had asked her teacher at school if she could bring cupcakes that day. She was told that she could. My daughter does not ride the bus in the mornings, only in the afternoons. That afternoon, when she went to get on the bus driver told her she could not bring them onto the bus. She was told to take the cupcakes to the office. She was upset and cried for the 45-minute bus ride. The bus driver told her that someone on the bus may have allergies. The cupcakes were in the container that they came in from the deli. If they were allowed in the school, then I felt like they should have been allowed on the bus. She gets off the bus at my mother's, and my mother had to take her back to school to pick up the cupcakes. On October the 24th, I called transportation to find out what the rules were for the bus. I didn't want any special rules. I wasn't asking for anything out of the ordinary. I just wanted to know what the rules were so that she did not break any of those rules. I was transferred to Mr. Rivas's voicemail. I left a message explaining what had happened and for him to please give me a call back. On Monday, I had not heard from Mr. Rivas. I didn't talk to him that day because I was hoping that he was going to check with the bus driver to see what she had to say about the situation, because there's always two stories. But when I didn't hear back from Mr. Rivas, on Tuesday morning, October the 28th, I left another message for Mr. Rivas, telling him my name and that I had left a message on the 24th and that I had not heard from him, that I did not appreciate it, nor was I going to tolerate being ignored, that if I had not heard from him by the end of the day, that I was going to call the superintendent. I did not hear from Mr. Rivas on Wednesday. I called the superintendent's office to get an appointment. Open house was that Thursday on the 30th. I went to the open house and talked to Dr. Whitney about what had happened. He assured me that I would hear from Mr. Rivas by Tuesday, November the 4th. Dr. Belton, the principal at Pioneer, called me that very night that I spoke to Mr. Whitney, and she apologized to me and asked me to please give my daughter her sincere apology for what had happened. And I explained to Dr. Belton that I did not have an issue with her, anyone at school, and I hope that Dr. Whitney explained that to her when he made her aware of the situation, which she told me that he did. On November the 7th, I called Dr. Whitney's office. He was not in. I spoke to the secretary and asked her to please put me on the list to speak here tonight, due to the fact that I still had not heard from Mr. Rivas. I saw Dr. Whitney Sunday, November the 9th, at Pioneer for the dedication ceremony. He asked if I had heard from Mr. Rivas. I told him no. He once again said that I would be hearing from him. And Dr. Whitney, he did call me last night, the eve of me coming here for the meeting. He was at the airport and said that he would not be in the office until Friday. Mr. Rivas said that he never received either of my messages that I had left him. I told him I find that hard to believe, that he did not get either of the messages. I asked, what about Dr. Whitney notifying you of the problem I was having? He said that he did receive the message from Dr. Whitney. At that point, I told Mr. Rivas that he was aware of the problem, and I do not appreciate the way that he handled this situation. When I asked him what the rules were, he replied, I cannot believe that the office personnel could not answer that question. I responded to him and told him that they told me that I would have to ask that question to Mr. Rivas, not by one person, but by two different people in the transportation office. Mr. Rivas told me that the cupcakes should have been allowed on the bus, being that they were in the container from the deli and were completely covered. He said that the bus driver should have radioed into the office if she was unsure about the cupcake situation, which was not done. I asked what will be done in the future to ensure that this does not happen to another child. He responded again that he was out of the office. I asked if I could have it in writing what the rules were for the bus. He said that he would get one to me, but he never asked me for my address or email address. So this leads me to believe that I will be ignored by Mr. Rivas once again. I asked Mr. Rivas how would he feel if this had been his child and they had been crying for 45 minutes on the bus. He told me that he would not like it. Now, my biggest concerns are this was a very small issue, and it should have been able to have been answered for me that very first day that I called transportation. If not that day, at least the following business day. It has taken me 3 weeks, a meeting with the superintendent, and then being put on the list to come here tonight to speak to get Mr. Rivas to return my phone call. It really leaves me wondering, this was a minor thing. If I really had a serious problem, what would I have to go through in order to get it taken care of? I mean, and if something is allowed in the school to be carried into the school, why is it not approved to be able to be carried on the bus? I don't understand that. And I'm here tonight just to make you aware of the issue. I can't make any of y'all do anything about it. But if you have a conscience at all, and if you truly have the students as your priority, I feel like something should be done. I don't want another child to have to go through that. I know to us it's something minor, but to an elementary age child, it's not. Thank you.
Thank you. Blanche Wiggins Hicks, Blanche Wiggins Hicks.
Good evening. My name is Blanche Wiggins Hicks. I'm speaking from the Suffolk Substitute Teacher Association, and I'm coming to you to ask if I could have permission to have a room or a gym or any place available at the Southwestern Elementary School, because I'm very much interested in having students be tutored as well as help students to be able to have a place to come to talk and understand what's going on when they go to school, what work they have to do, and just to be there to listen to them first and third Saturday of the month from 1 to 3 to be out there for them. So they'll be able to have somebody they can come and talk to, because when you're in class, there's so much going on and the teachers have so much to do as well as the students have so much to do. They need to have a place that can come to relax their minds and to really understand what that is in that backpack that they have to pull out, as well as the gender, as well as the curriculum, and it just goes on and on. The tests I got to take tomorrow, or whatever they have on their minds, so they'll be able to understand when they go to class the next day what they have to do. And just to help enforce what the students are doing in the classroom, to have a place to come to so they can understand what they have to do when they go to school.
And did you mean Pioneer or Southwestern? Pioneer Elementary School?
Southwestern Elementary School.
We're using Southwestern?
No, you all remember we're going to be giving that back to the city after we clear it.
Southwestern is going to close, ma'am. We won't be able to use that school.
Well, can the board find another place?
That's why I asked you. Pioneer is a school that...
Pioneer be fine.
Okay.
Girls' school.
Okay, you would have to apply to use that school and get an application from this.
Yes, getting the use of facility request form from the actual school would be the first step. A use of facilities form.
Okay,
Well,
well, I
Pioneer
had put a,
Elementary School, they would provide you with a use of facility form, ma'am.
yes, sir. I had put a form in when Southwestern Elementary School was open. So would that form be void now because the school is closed? Because I did it 2 years ago,
Yes,
and I
ma'am.
never heard anything.
I think so. I think you'd have to fill one out every year.
Start over again?
You fill one out every year, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Perry, elementary teachers.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Perry, and I'm a third grade teacher at Creekside Elementary. Several teachers and I spoke at last month's school board meeting about various concerns that we've had for quite a few years. Since then, a small group of teachers from throughout the district had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Whitney and Mrs. Chavis to discuss a selected few of our concerns in great detail. It was a very positive experience and opened a line of communication that we were excited about. Discussions took place pertaining to concerns that exist within the district, but also in education across the board. We were able to express thoughts that otherwise we would not have been able to do. So, both Dr. Whitney and Mrs. Chavis were able to provide us with insight to decisions that are made on the administrative level that helped us with a better understanding of certain practices and policies that are in place. For that, we are truly appreciative of their time and commitment to the teachers, staff, and students in the district. Everyone here, from the community, parents, teachers, all the way up to school board office and school board members, have a common goal, and that is for our students to be successful. Since our focus of the meeting was only a selected few of our concerns, we are looking forward to continuing these conversations and/or utilize avenues offered by Dr. Whitney during our meeting to address specific concerns. We do plan to be present more frequently at school board meetings and the like, to continue to be aware of the changes and progress taking place that impact the classroom, both students and teachers directly. We hope that our involvement will be seen as us moving in a positive direction for the Suffolk Public Schools as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. I appreciate your comments. I'd like to make a statement about this. All decisions should not be made from the top alone. Most of the information that we need comes from the people in the trenches, you people there, and we appreciate what you've done for us and the information you've given us. Thank you very much. We have no other people signed up. Is there anybody else who'd like to come up and speak? No. Okay, we're going to go to business by board members. Ms. Bouchard, we'll start with you today.
Okay, I'm going to be really quick because I see what time it is. I just would like to take the opportunity to thank the people in my borough who supported my campaign for re-election. I appreciate it very much. And I would like to say to those who supported my opponent, who was Dorothy Bland Gamble, she ran an excellent campaign, and I have gotten together with her since that time, and we're going to try to work together to address the needs of the entire Chuckatuck community. So I do want to make a pledge to those who did not support me that I work for you too, and I will try to address your concerns for this next 4 years. Thank you.
Skeeter.
Thank you. You want me to unpack now?
Unpack her concern.
A new word. Last year was rigor, this year is unpack, so we'll remember that.
I'm glad to know it's new because I sure didn't know it.
I'd like to say the same. I thank those who supported me by re-electing me back to the school board to represent the Cypress Borough. Thank you so much for your support, and I'm here to do what I've been doing for the last 21 years. So I guess you say you weigh that either way you want to weigh it. You've been doing something or you haven't, but someone thought I was doing something to re-elect me. I wanted the parent to know that call with the safety issue at the schools. I've talked to the board and the superintendent about it, and of course he will be looking into that issue. We had 2 nice honor programs so far, Kings Fork and Lakeland High School. We congratulate those honor students. And I think I've finished unpacking, so I'll just pack it back up. Thank you.
Mr. Perkinson.
I'd like to thank everyone who came out and voted, no matter whom they voted for. I know that Mr. Minnick and I have talked after the election, and we're going to be working together to do what's going to be best for the students of Suffolk. And I would encourage everyone in Suffolk, no matter whom they supported, to continue supporting the school system and or city council members, no matter how that was. So again, thank you very much for y'all's coming out and participating in democracy.
Bart.
Well, I had the opportunity, as did the rest of my colleagues here, to visit Pioneer Elementary School and to go to the formal opening of Pioneer Elementary School. If you haven't been there, please go see it. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful. I'd just like to add this little caveat. I got a chance today as well to visit one of the best schools in Suffolk, Northern Shores Elementary School. I'm sort of biased. At any rate, and I'd like to say that Dr. Belton, who's now at Pioneer, came from Northern Shores Elementary School, just to add that. No, I really did have a wonderful time at the open house, and of course I really enjoy visiting Northern Shores Elementary School. I'm the only person sitting here who probably has only one school in their district that's totally and absolutely just in my district and nowhere else, but I do enjoy visiting the schools. I want to say to teachers, I thank you for your interest and the hard work that you do. And I thank you for your concern for students, because standing up and saying something, whether you agree or disagree with the decision, is important as a practice in democracy, but also it just lets us know how strongly you feel about what you're doing. And I think those are the kind of people that we want in the classrooms. Thank you for what you've done, and that's all I have to say.
Mr. Copeland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank as well the voters who are thought that I had done such a job that they returned me back to office. And for the next 4 years, hopefully, we will put Suffolk public school system at the very, very top. As I stated Sunday, I challenge all of my board members that we are determined to make Pioneer the top school in the city, and academically, as well as morally. Well, at the same time, as you know, we appreciate our school quite a bit, and at this setting, many of the old graduates of National Training Southwestern were recognized that we make a major contribution to that school every year, and we plan to continue to make financial support to the school, and we appreciate our school. We have had a long time getting it, but thanks that we have the school, and we appreciate it. That's it.
I omitted one item under unfinished business, and I'll do that before I go ahead and give my remarks. Revised for approval school calendar 2015-2016.
Yes, I'm sure Ms. Chavis is anxious to come and share that with the group. You had directed us to reconsider having Memorial Day as one of the makeup days, and I think we have a plan here that is worth consideration. Ms. Chavis.
Yes, we have included the 6th-day missed of school. If you could look further down to the column, the row next to the second from the bottom, that was a Memorial Day makeup for that 6th day. We have now looked at the total number of instructional hours that are built into the 15-16 calendar, and we will be able to, I guess my time is up, we will be able to, we have instructional hours built into the calendar to make that 6-day a makeup with instructional hours.
And I will note, as it was displayed on the screen, the 7th day is a Saturday. We looked at the calendar, and we can't find any other way of finding an additional day other than that. But as you can see, the recommendation is for the 6th day to include, it will be the extra instructional hours that's built into our day, and then the 7th day, Saturday, to be determined by the board.
That's correct. Everybody am aware of that, right? Okay, good. We're good to go. Do we need to vote on it?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that we accept the revised calendar for 2015-16 as explained by Mrs. Chavis.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
I'll finish my comments at this time. I'd like to recognize Mrs. Barnes. I don't know if she's here. She's a volunteer at Booker T. Washington. I happened to be at a civics meeting as clinic this past Tuesday and met her, and she promoted Booker T. Washington better than any teacher, any administrator, anybody here. She was crazy about her plight in helping students read. She was crazy about Dr. Rice's plan and helping her to learn how to teach students read. So thank you, Mrs. Barnes. And if any of you would like, anybody out in our listening audience would like to volunteer, please call us, call your schools that you'd like to volunteer with.
Pardon me, is that Ms. Margaret Barnes?
I'm not too sure. Her first name.
Because I think Mr. Copeland and I are on her committee.
Yeah, she said
reading
that.
there. Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
I had the opportunity to teach Ms. Barnes in the 7th grade.
Her age, yeah, she did mention both you were
Yeah, we were in the...
teaching reading, and she was just promoting Booker T, which is I felt great about. I'd like to recognize Mr. Gilchrist, the custodian at Oakland Elementary School. I've never seen a cleaner school at the end of the day in all my life, and it is outstanding. Anybody here from Oakland, please stand up. Go ahead, there you go. Thank you.
And to think about how old that parts of that school are, it makes it even more remarkable how clean that school is.
Well, I walked down one hall and came down the other one, and there wasn't a spot anywhere, and there were people at 4 o'clock in the afternoon washing the walls, cleaning the...
I was going to say, if you ever doubt it, just put your hand up at the top of the tile there, and there's not even dust. It's remarkable.
I would also like to commend the staff in doing an outstanding job on the dedication at Pioneer. It was a truly great event, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Did we ever address that item about the thing at Forest Glen? The speaker.
We'll touch base.
Okay, we'll touch base with that later.
Okay.
All right, with that having said, there's nothing else I have to report here.
Chair,
Yes.
recognize the school board elect member that's here.
Mr. Mitnick, please stand up. Congratulations on... While Mr. Mitnick's here, there's still some... Keep standing, Mr. Mitnick, while you're here. Tell them the date for buying the bricks. Closing date.
The final date of buying brick at Pioneer Elementary School is 15.
Thank you. Okay, let's see here. What else? Action. Personnel report. Yep.
Mr. Chair, I move that the personnel report be approved.
Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
Mr. Chair, I move that the pupil personnel report be approved.
Second it.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
Mr. Chair, I recommend the approval of the personnel action of 14/15-2.
Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
Before we adjourn, I'd like to ask the board to look at informational items and see if there's anything that needs to be explained or further discussed at this time. Informational items on the back of the page, please. On last item, Dr. Winter, can you give us an update of the bus strategies in place at this time?
Yes, one of the things that we have done is we've solicited for more bus drivers, and we have had several come out of training, and they're actually been assigned to different routes to address those areas where buses may not be arriving as quickly as we'd like for them to. We also have an additional group, I believe, in training. The last time I checked, there were 11 in training, and we're also going through applications to try to get more. The challenge is, the goal is to try to keep bus drivers or pre-service bus drivers in training so that we can readily put them in place either as a substitute bus driver to cover those runs when drivers are out, or to work at those areas where we're still not getting kids to school as quickly as we'd like for them, or home as quickly.
Have we had any further runs consolidated or buses melded together?
We have, and I can have a more detailed report in December to give you an update, but what I'm asking Mr. Rivas to do is to provide me with those areas where buses are still not on time, and then from there, what would be the possible solution? And in many cases, it's an additional driver. So as soon as we get an additional driver, we try to put them on that route to make sure that it's not a consistent thing. So it's a matter of really trying to address it as we get the drivers well-trained.
If further business to come before this body, we declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Have a safe trip home.